Welcome to the Grad Life Podcast, where we're talking about all things grad.
I'm Rami.
And I'm Jess.
Today, we're talking about women in leadership, overcoming the confidence gap, and breaking the glass ceiling. All right, let's get into it. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Grad Life Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Alongside Jess today, we have two wonderful women in leadership. You have Sara Marks and Jalen Poles. Would you guys mind introducing yourselves and telling us a little bit about what you guys do or what you women do?
Sure. Thanks for that catch.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I say guys
My apologies.
Too. It's okay.
Yeah.
My name is Sara Marks. I am the executive director of the Franciscan Federation. It's a national nonprofit that works with religious congregations in the Franciscan tradition, as well as laity and Franciscan organizations to further the Franciscan mission in our world. I am also the CEO and founder of FINA Catalysts, which is a leadership, consulting, and facilitation firm.
Awesome.
My name is Jalen Poles. I am a second-year graduate student here at Newman. I am in the Business and Organizational Leadership program, and I'm also one of 4 hall directors here on campus. I also am the head coach of a cheerleading team, taking care of a bunch of high school girls and a guy, and that's really fun.
I didn't know about the cheerleading fact about you. Okay.
Yes.
I'm
This
a
is my
former
second
cheerleader.
year. Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that either.
Go team.
I was not a cheerleader. You guys don't want to see me do
Neither
that.
was I.
I would love to. I think that you would be good.
I would be the base or whatever the bottom part
Yes.
is. Yeah, that's, yep. Yeah.
So let's start off with one of the biggest questions I think I've got here. We've got, what are some common challenges and barriers that women face in attaining leadership roles?
Specifically for women.
Mm-hmm.
So I think one of the greatest challenges is that the world, especially the corporate world, our business world, it was really made for men.
Mm-hmm.
And so women function very differently in the corporate and just in general workspace. And so sometimes trying to gain the experience to, I guess you can say, climb the corporate ladder, is really difficult for women because we're given different opportunities at different times in our lives. They're often later and not as respected as men's roles. So, for example, I was once in an interview for an executive level position, and there was another guy who was in that same running. It was down to 3 of us. And the one candidate had kind of dropped off, and it was the 2 of us. And when all was said and done, the organization wanted to go with the guy instead of me, saying, well, simply, he just had more experience than you did, and he's a bit older. And I was like, excuse me? Like, first off, I know who this guy was. I was 7 years older than him.
Wow.
And he was in a VP position at a university. And I said, my experience comes packaged differently. And I think that's why you think I don't have the same experience. When he was working as a VP in a university, I was starting my own company and running it fairly successfully in the first year in the black, making good money. So I think that the challenges are that initial challenge is just getting the chance, getting someone to say, okay, I'm going to let you in the door, because we're not always given those chances in the beginning, just simply because we have a society that thinks a certain way of women that's not as favorably as men.
Yeah.
I also agree. And I think that it's done subconsciously. Like nowadays, 2023, a lot of women are, standing up for themselves when it comes to leadership roles and advocating for themselves. And I have heard men advocating for women as well, but still subconsciously making decisions that coincide with the stigma around women, that women are not equal with men and women cannot do the same thing that men can do. So I think that's a struggle in itself, like trying to get out of that mindset. But I think that it starts with me. Like, I've always been a person to advocate for myself. Like, I am just as good as the next person. And yeah.
I often think that, like, sometimes when women are in leadership roles, like, you have to remember that, like, we're kind of, like, made and equipped differently. So oftentimes we express ourselves a little differently than a man. So I think sometimes that causes confusion where it's like we're coming across as soft, but more just maybe considerate or caring in that way. And it's not necessarily us being soft or soft spoken or anything like that. It's just that's kind of like how we were equipped, and it might come across different than how a man would address the same issue that a woman might have addressed it.
Like we do it more empathetically.
Yes, exactly. That's it. Yep.
And I think what's interesting is when a woman doesn't, when a woman shows masculine leadership skills, she's then labeled things I'm told I'm not supposed to say on this show.
Yes.
So we get labeled when we take on masculine leadership skills that are totally acceptable when it's a man saying it or doing it or whatever action that is. And a woman is considered not compassionate. So it's sort of this lose-lose space for women where we are constantly juggling asserting ourselves and also representing ourselves in a way that we think will be accepted.
Yeah.
And it's like this whole second level of thinking we have to go through that I don't think most men in leadership roles even think twice about.
And does that contribute to the confidence gap and some sort of like imposter syndrome
It
there?
does, because I've been told that before. Like, I am very out there and very outspoken. I'm not afraid to speak up for myself. So when it does come time for me to speak up for myself and not let anybody walk over me, now I'm told to calm down. Like, you need to relax. And like that just makes me feel like I want to say it was about a year or two ago, I kind of stepped back, like away from myself. I kind of lost myself because so many people were telling me like, no, you need to calm down. Like, and I'm just like, okay, well, maybe I just don't need to say anything. And I didn't like that. Like, I sat back and I reflected on it, and I'm like, this is not who I am. Like, I'm not a person to sit and be quiet and let things just go however. Like, I'm a person who advocates for myself and for others, for women especially. And I kind of got out of that funk, and now I'm a nice little butterfly again.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I think Jalen said something really important there too, advocating for ourselves. That's something women have to do all the time, is advocate for themselves that, yes, I can do this. And not just with the outside world, but ourselves. Because we are constantly bombarded with all of this information that tells us we're not good enough. We're not pretty enough, intelligent enough, smart enough. We get that a lot in the media. And not that men don't, but I think it is heavily there for women. And when you're told that enough, you start to believe those things. And when I think of my own experience of imposter syndrome, it started for me very strongly when I started a PhD program. I'm currently working on my dissertation in an organizational leadership PhD program. And I started the program thinking, oh, like, I'm going to try this for a semester, prove to myself that like I can't really handle this, and then I'll know, and I don't have to think about this anymore. And I had a 4.0 after my first semester. It was this like mind-blowing moment where I was like, maybe I can do this. And not only can I do it, but I'm doing it well. And then I started my own business and I was successful. And then I landed this job with the Franciscan Federation in an executive role. And I believe I'm doing really well with that. And I started to realize the tapes that were playing in my head, I had to silence and say, I don't know where that's coming from, but it's simply not true.
You had to prove it to yourself.
Yeah.
So what about mentorship, sponsorship programs contributing to the advancement of women in leadership?
I
can you say
think that
about
we
that?
need more of those.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
100%.
I love to see, a group of, young girls, young women getting together and just empowering one another. Sometimes you might feel like you're alone and by yourself and having feelings of imposter syndrome. But once you group together with another group of women and just have a simple conversation that could lead into something else, it could lead into like this huge motivational thing. It's like, wow, like I feel empowered to do better. I feel empowered to, keep going to school. And I really do think we need more of them. We do. And once I am finished school, I do want to do something like that, even though I kind of am right now with the girls that I coach. It's kind of just like on the back end, like, yes, I'm here to coach, teach you cheerleading, but like I'm also teaching you how to be a good person outside of this.
Yeah.
And there's something about, I think that mentorship and should look a certain way. we have to be open and really, really authentic and honest with each other. When you're mentoring younger women in these leadership roles, to be able to say, you know what, I showed up on my first day and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. There is a certain piece of fake it till you make it that I actually think is really good advice. Because the more I live life, the more I realize nobody actually knows what they're doing. It's simply confidence. And over time, when you're in these roles, you learn and you grow. And that's when you can say, oh, okay, I do actually come from a place of knowledge and background and experience. But we live in a world where every job you apply for, don't you always see you need 5-10 years experience?
Yeah.
Well, how do you land that first job? How do you get that first position if you don't have a space that's willing to let you grow and learn to gain that experience? And I think that's one of the downfalls that we experience a lot, is trying to find that experience in someone who will mentor you in that. And I just think the more honest you can be in that position when you're mentoring, it will ease that imposter syndrome for another person.
Yeah.
I know that that's something that's worked for me with anyone that I've seen in a leadership position. I really, really value anyone who's able to be authentic with me, able to just be level with me and not make it seem like, you should know how to do this. This is something that everybody knows how to do, rather than like, when I first started, I didn't know what I was doing either, but this is how I grew from it. Like, I value that a lot. And just like being able to be vulnerable around those leaders, like that helps me personally become motivated to do what they're doing or even more.
Yeah. And it's important to have mentors in different areas of your life too, right? Like me being a mom, like I have mom mentors out there. Like I have like religious mentors out there. I have professional mentors out there. So it's important to kind of like have those different people in your life that can help in those different areas.
And then in terms of like industries and sectors that have seen significant progress in gender equality and leadership, what are some lessons that can be learned from their success?
So the majority of my professional career, I have worked with women's religious congregations. And so in a sense, my entire professional career was really fostered and developed by great women leaders. I worked with the Sisters of St. Francis of Philadelphia. I'm actually a former member of that community, and discerned with them for 5 years. So I have these very strong examples of women in leadership. When I am outside of that context, I'm constantly shocked at how far behind different organizations are in the way that they treat their women leaders, the way that they place them in boxes. Women's religious congregations, they never saw a box. They just saw opportunity. They went out, they did what they had to do, and people respected them for that. So I've learned a lot in terms of just showing up, being, like Jalen said, that being yourself, advocating for yourself, showing up with a certain level of authority that deep down you have, and being able to just share that. And I've witnessed that over and over in these congregational settings.
I look at it right here at Newman. Throughout my 4 years here, I was here looking at who was on campus and what the employees look like. And I look specifically in those who make some of the hard decisions. And as of this year, I do know like the Office of, Student Affairs, Dean of Students, we had a female assistant dean, a female dean, and I loved that. Like, just seeing it here in my own space, in the place that I live, in the place that I'm getting my education, just seeing those women in leadership just gives me the chills. Like, I want to be there. I want to be, this person making the big decisions someday, because that's how I've always been. But just seeing it here at Newman very locally just makes me want to grow and be like them someday.
So just piggybacking off of that, how can the media play a role in shaping perceptions of women in leadership and breaking those stereotypes?
I think majority of the media doesn't do us any justice, if I'm being honest. I think that at least the part of the media that I can see, you know, as a 24-year-old on social media, we don't get the best rep. We are kind of looked at as like the stereotypical woman, like, oh, women do this, women cook and clean, and that's it. Because that is almost what's being glorified right now on social media, is just the woman is the maker of the home, which I'm not saying there's anything bad, but I think that it does give us a little bit of imposter syndrome when people like me who are independent and want to do so much more than, you know, just tending to the home. It gives me a lot of imposter syndrome. Like, I'm not supposed to want to be this way. I do think that with the mentorship groups and things like that, with the growth of them, I think that could be alleviated a little bit. Just inspiring young kids, because a lot of them are being influenced by the media as well. Inspiring them to be so much more than just a stereotypical woman. I think that could take away from that.
It is interesting that there are so many opportunities for women to be given chances in the media, and yet we don't always see it come through. Mm-hmm. I watch Channel 6 ABC News most nights. I know maybe that dates me, makes me old, but I do watch the nightly news. And when Jim Gardner was retiring, they had a phenomenal opportunity to put either a person of color or a woman into that anchor role. But what did they do? They chose a younger white man. And I don't want to be like down on white men, because that's not what I'm trying to do here. But I do think it was an opportunity that they have a black man anchor that could have moved into that 6 o'clock role. They have women who could have moved into that main anchor position, but they chose not to do that. And I think that by making that choice, that said something really loud to women who watch this show, who watch this news outlet, when the women are the weather women, the weather people. Mm-hmm. And there was one, I guess there's two now in sports, but why are they not at the anchor table? So I think it's the choices that are made around organizations choosing to put people forward. And I would love to know why they made that decision. Mm-hmm. Why didn't they put one of their other anchors in that role?
Young girls are looking at that type of stuff, and they're noticing, and they remember for 20 years later. Like, and that's a part of, like, one of the things that I think I like to say I contribute to, especially in my role now, is a lot of the times, like, we get opportunities to showcase different pictures on our website and our brochures and whatnot, but I'm an advocate for making sure that we're showcasing an equal amount of women. So that way, because when I was younger, and the reason why I wanted to go into higher education is because the people I saw going into higher education, and then pictures that I saw on billboards and whatnot. Like, I see these powerful women, and I'm like, wow, like, I want to be like them. So we're looking at all of that stuff from a very young age. The media plays a huge role in this, and you know, it needs to be a better job done in this situation. Like, I'm thinking about, like, different shows that are, like, really popular, like Scandal, right? Or like How to Get Away with Murder. Rami's like, I have no clue with that.
I don't watch TV like that.
Me neither, Rami. It's okay. I'm with you.
Yeah,
I'm like a TV buff, like, so, but I look at those shows and, like, yeah, they feature, like, great, powerful women that are leaders, right? But then there's always, like, a man that's behind them that's, like, helping them some type of way. Like, so it's important to, like, pay attention to that stuff too. And it's like, all right, let's see them become the leader all by themselves without needing, like, an aid of a man to help them.
And that reminds me, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, good.
Yes, literally yesterday, someone told me that I remind them of Dr. Bailey from Grey's Anatomy.
Okay.
And I'm like, wow, okay, like, all right, I'll take
Love
that.
Dr. Bailey.
I watched Dr. Gray. I mean, I watch Grey's Anatomy, so I can relate.
Okay.
That's a show.
Maybe you
can
can be an extra and give them some tips about physical therapy and what's accurate.
They could just call me. You know, I'm gonna leave you my
Dr.
number.
Rami.
Let's pump the brakes on
Soon
that.
to be.
And I think there's two other things here. One, this idea that we use terms when we talk about social media, how often do women say, yeah, girl boss? I'm kind of anti-girl boss. And that's because we're putting that connotation on it that I'm just a boss.
Yeah, yeah.
Why does
Why
being
does
a
being a girl
girl
Yep.
matter?
Yes.
First off, I'm not a girl, I'm a woman. Second, I'm a boss like any other man out there is a boss. And then the second piece, and this would be a piece of advice for anybody who is listening, who is sitting there thinking, like Jalen just said, I see in this person who I want to be. I want to be at the table. I want to make the decisions. Shall we say, I want to be in the room where it happens. The room
I don't
where
know
it
what that
happens.
is. What's
Me
on
neither.
Hamilton, girl.
Oh. I need to do better,
Ah.
basically, is what,
Okay.
is what I'm getting.
You can cut that out. But
No, we're leaving that in.
We're keeping that.
but if you want to be in the room where it happens, you need to say yes when the opportunity comes. And I think often, because of everything we've talked about so far, women tend to think less of themselves. And when an offer is on the table, they tend to shy away from it, or they could. There's a risk of saying, you know what, again, the tapes are playing, I'm not good enough, I can't do this. And they say no. What if you said yes? To get more people in those roles, when the offer's there, say yes. And you can learn it as you go, and you can seek out the mentors, and you can get that advice, and you can be a strong leader. But we need more people to say yes when opportunity comes around.
So you mentioned earlier about how you started your own company, being a CEO, 4.0 in your PhD program. So how do you address your work-life balance that way? And what are the unique challenges that women face in that role, I guess?
Yeah, so work-life balance, that has always been something that's been really important to me, and also really challenging because we live in a world, again, that was created by men, and so women's cycles are very different than men's cycles. Men restart basically every 24 hours. Women, it's every 28 days, and there's lots of changes and hormones going on in that, that we enter into these spaces differently. And so for me, what's been phenomenal is... I don't want to say that the pandemic was amazing, because it was not. However, it created this seismic shift in the way we look at work.
Yeah.
And that seismic shift of how we engage in work that came with the pandemic allowed women to work differently. And so for me, at the level I'm at now, running my own business and in an executive level role, I have a lot of freedom of what my day looks like and how I do my work, which is very helpful. But I am constantly having to remind myself that the 8 hours a day at your desk does not work for you. And I sometimes feel guilty when I stop at 3 because my brain is I just know nothing else is going to come. But if I can stay focused on what my body is telling me, I'm actually way more productive and more successful in what I do. And a second part of this, as you get into these leadership roles, you start to get into places where you are thriving because you're loving what you're doing. And when you love what you do, I would say I made this shift from work-life balance to work-life integration. That everything I do, I'm passionate about. And my work is just one piece of that. So I don't know I don't know that I have particular advice on how to achieve that work-life integration. But I think listening to your body and not listening to but I'm supposed to, or I should have, will really help you to be successful.
So surround yourself with things that you love to do is probably the biggest motif, I guess.
Yeah.
As you would say, theme.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jill, I almost cut you off.
No,
You were
it's
ready
okay.
to say something.
It's okay. I might be the opposite. I don't, in my head, I know work-life balance. I know personal care and, self-care and making sure that I'm good. But sometimes I let my personality and wanting to be a leader and wanting to help people 24/7, will get in the way of that. And that's something that I am working on as a leader. But those things that I do, I am also very passionate about, but I just don't know when to create a boundary and cut it off for just a minute. Because I'm always the person you can call me whenever. I'll be there. I will help you. And they'll call me and I can't be mad at that. But I want to be in everything and I want to help out with everything. So, I guess I can take from you, Sarah, making it not work-life balance. What did you use?
Work-life integration.
Work-life integration. integrating everything that I do into work into relaxation time because I am passionate about it and I love what I do.
And I think it's important to know, like you just said earlier, you're 24. I'm 40. There's a huge difference. There was a time in my life when I hustled. And there was a time when you had to, especially for women who are trying to get that experience and trying to get people to see them for these leadership roles, that takes time and practice to get there. And a confidence that maybe is, I don't know, maybe I need to see that as a gift and as I get older. It took 20 years in a professional, setting for me to really see 20 years and a global pandemic. For me to realize, oh, maybe I can integrate my life a little differently.
That's also the importance of a mentorship too, is now you're mentoring to Jalen and me, about like, this is what you should do. And this is what took me years to learn, but I'm going to teach it to you now.
And when you're in grad school, because I'm currently still in grad school too, or back in grad school, I'm actually working on my dissertation. But when you're in grad school, you have to think of it as a season.
Yes.
You are going to have a heavier workload because of your job, your studies, your family, whatever that looks like for you. And when you think of things in terms of a season, you can get through it better than when you think like there's no end in sight. And I don't know, maybe this is too much of a weird...
No, I need it. I need this. I need this.
Well, have you ever seen The Incredible The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt?
I've seen a couple episodes of those.
No. Okay. Well, that's
really
not
funny
going to be a
show.
good reference then. Okay, new reference. So I really believe anybody can do anything for a year when it comes to work. We've all been in positions where we're like, I'm not thriving. This is not a good place for me. But realizing, you know what? You can do it for a year and then you can make a decision about that. That's the same when I experience my grad school experiences, when I did my master's and now when I'm doing my PhD. You can do anything for a season. So if you just keep telling yourself that, and Jalen, for you, like, this is your season. This is your heavy season. This is your hustle season.
It's very heavy.
Where you're
very
like,
much hustling.
You're putting a name out there for yourself, and that is all good. But all of that hustle now is going to afford you later that opportunity to say, okay, now I'm going to, like, re-equalize my life and move from there.
Thank you. I needed that. I did.
And to top it all off, for what role can men play, like myself, in supporting women in leadership roles, both in the professional world and in grad school?
I like recognition. I want men to recognize that I am putting in the work, that I am, excelling as a leader or in school. I want you to tell me good job. I want you to tell me that you see me, and just to recognize that I am someone and that I am doing the same thing that you are. And like, I can reciprocate it back to you. I think starting there, like men just simply recognizing that women, like, I'm that girl. Like, you're going to see, like, I'm actually putting work in, and I appreciate recognition when it comes to that. So nothing goes unnoticed.
And make sure that you're also listening to women when they speak, right? Like, I think people say, like, oh, he mansplained me. I don't know if you guys ever heard that term before.
Yes.
But, just making sure that, like, you're recognizing, like, okay, they said that, they gave a good idea, and then you're telling them, okay, yeah, that was great. I recognize you said that, and now moving on to the next thing. So I think that's important, too, is just, making sure that, like, you're not listening to repeat, but listening to listen and then create your own thought after that.
Have you ever sat on an airplane next to a person whose legs were just like splayed out, like the entire row was theirs?
Yes.
Done it on the subway too.
Yeah. When people do that and you get into your seat and there's just simply no room for you, or it's awkward because you're trying to slowly push your thigh against theirs, make room for yourself. It is very difficult for women to walk into workspaces and have to do that pushing. I would simply say, make space for women. Invite women in and give them the platform, the ability, the space. I hate that there is a certain piece of those who have power do have to give room for power. It's not that different than the empowering conversation we talked about earlier. It's not that you're giving the power, you're leaving room for the power to happen. So simply make space for women in your life, in your work, in any space that you find yourself, make space.
Give women a seat at the table.
And with that, I think we're going to end it right there. Thank you, ladies,
Thank
you.
you.
for coming on and spending some time with us.
Thank you.
I think this was really enlightening for me, too.
Oh, that's good.
So
That's always
thank
good.
you. Yeah.
There goes a step right there. A man could take listening to this podcast episode.
There you go.
All right.